So it's time to take a look at what I'm going to be watching for winter 2022 anime. Just a little bit over, I'd say a week away. I mean, a lot of stuff does kind of start dribbling in January 1st onwards, but usually the main series I'm looking forward to, the first to second week into the month is when things really start popping off for me. Now, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be reviewing, and I even teased it over on Twitter. But things change once I start actually watching. I can realize, oh shit, this is actually more of just an enjoyment show rather than just trying to break it down for 6 to 8 minutes a week. So I'm going to go over the things that really interest me. I know of all the things people are excited for, and it's perfectly fine to recommend things, but just know I do enjoy things other than just anime, so I'm not going to watch everything in a season. If things really kick off that I don't watch, I'll take a look at them after the season's over. But this is the main things that I'm looking forward to, and quite a few of these you might see reviews on if they really do impress like I think they will. Now first up is kind of self-explanatory, it's Attack on Titan. I mean, the final season, it's rumored, I guess the kind of like leaks, rumors, whatever you want to call them, is that the last 6 or 7 chapters might actually end up becoming a movie because of just, I don't know, the way the leaks work online. And if that does happen, I don't think that's the worst thing ever, because the animation intensity of this final part here is going to be through the roof for a lot of the scenes, especially the last 6 or so chapters. So if that's the case, I would be perfectly fine waiting for those chapters in a movie format, especially because it'd probably break box office records. But based on the trailers and the promotion, given that this was being worked on at the same time as part 1 of the final season, it's looking great. This is my favorite part of the story. I know people will say, oh man, what about the ending? I've heard mixed things. I love the ending personally myself. And the internet will always hate anything that ends because it's impossible to end something with everyone loving it, especially when you get as big as something like Attack on Titan. And any of the issues I think people have will most likely be touched upon within this final season to flesh it out. Either way, I like how Mappa's been handling it, and of course, I'm going to be covering that shit because it's my favorite anime and my favorite manga, and I'm always going to be here discussing it. The strongest sage with the weakest crest. This, at first glance to me, I was actually going to skip over it because I thought it was just going to be a random whatever show. But the idea of the world's most powerful sage decides reincarnation is necessary to become the strongest of all. Upon his rebirth as a young boy, he's thrilled to discover he's been born with optimal crests for magical combat on his first try. Unfortunately, the world he's been born into has abysmally poor standards when it comes to magic, and everyone thinks he's marked for failure. Yeah, it's an isekai, it's not the most original idea at face value, but I think that sounds fun to me, and I'm willing to give it a shot, and I've seen quite a few people actually excited for this one, so we'll see where it goes from here, and maybe it will impress us. And if anything in recent memory has shown me otherwise, the most okay idea of premises turn out to be some of the best anime of the season, so we'll see where it goes. We have, of course, My Dress-Up Darling, which this one immediately intrigued me before I even really looked into too much. I mean, the PVs look absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. It's no surprise that this is the main show that Cloverworks is putting all their resources into, but a show I really liked was Smile Down the Runway, and that show to me was about kind of runway modeling, and that show really had no viewership. So when I saw a lot of people excited for something about, making clothing and things like that, to me, it was like, oh my god, the community is giving me that second chance of being able to discuss these types of shows and maybe actually have people watch them. Gojo, who cares about one thing, making Hina dolls. With nobody to share his obsession, he has trouble finding friends or even holding a conversation, but after the school's most popular girl reveals a secret of her own, he discovers a new purpose for his sewing skills. Together, they're going to make cosplay dreams come true. I think just the over idea of that is fun, because you don't really see stuff like that, and when you do, no one decides to discuss it, but the fact that there's actually some popularity and hype behind that has me pretty excited. We had the Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt. The main thing that got my eye with this one was that it actually looks rather funny. But I heard this one's going to be really, really good because you have this prince who's ready to commit treason, and who can blame him? Faced with an impossible task of ruling his pathetic little kingdom, this poor guy just can't catch a break. But with a brilliant idea of auctioning off his country, this lazy prince should be able to retire once and for all. Or that was the plan, until his treasonous schemes lead to disastrous consequences, namely accidental victories. and the favor of the people. And if you watch the preview, you just kind of see him getting like pushed further and further. At one point you see him in the battlefield. This sounds hilarious and really, really refreshing, and I think everyone needs to give this one a go because I think it's going to be funny, going to have a little action packed, but it's going to really give those situational comedy scenes a run for their money when it comes to other anime. I think this one's going to be a treat for sure. I mean, case study of Vanitas second core, of course we're going to be talking about that. The first one I think was definitely underappreciated over in the West. I mean, there was a lot of fans of it, but it kind of reminded me of like the Fruits Basket mentality when it first started, right? You know, the first core Fruits Basket, while it was popular, I feel like the main driving force was manga readers, and that's kind of how I felt with the anime here. I loved it myself, but I know every time I recommended people, they kind of shrugged it off. Now that the first core is done, the hype is still there. I'm hoping we're going to get that Fruits Basket treatment where people really, really start consuming it and more people can discuss it with like-minded individuals across the globe, because this show's awesome, it's action-packed, it's hilarious, and it's a little sexy at times too. In the Land of Leadale is one of those shows that has me quite intrigued because the immediate like first couple of lines just sell you on it, you know, typical VR MMORPG. But then the life support system shuts off and the character passes away. But then a couple hundred years later is within the game. Now, this to me, especially if you watch the preview, it looks beautiful, it looks hilarious, it looks, I mean, depending on how the premise goes, could be emotional too. It just really has everything that makes a VR MMO story work, in my opinion. I'm really curious to see where it will go from here. I mean, this is one of those shows that I definitely recommend watching the preview as well because it really does sell me. That was actually the thing I watched first, and then I read the premise, and I was like, oh, this preview makes a lot more sense because there was a couple of things, because at the time there was no subs for the trailer, and I was like, okay, I wonder why they're so shocked to see a character, and then everything started clicking. You have Love of Kill, which kind of seems a little interesting to me. Probably not going to cover it, but I am interested in watching it because you have two assassins facing off at a workplace, cool bounty hunter, mysterious and powerful other character, and it just, I mean, there's like the first 6 minutes of the show available already. I think it's on Crunchyroll's channel or one of them, and it looks a little goofy, it looks a little funny, and it looks a little badass, and I think it will be a fun show to either binge or watch week by week in little bite-sized pieces, but either way, it looks interesting. You have Orient, which is from the creator of Magi, and really, I didn't even need to read a premise to know I was interested in watching it. Looking at the preview, it doesn't look to be as refined as like the first and second season of Magi, but it does look fun, and I think that's the big thing for me in a show like this, is to be fun, and depending on where the story really goes, I imagine it'll be a 12-episode anime. Depending on how well it does, we could very much see multiple seasons. Of course, we all want Magi Season 3, but I don't think we should distract from the fact that this still looks good on its own. We are getting Devil's a Part-Timer Season 2 after all these years. I don't think the hope for Magi's dead either, and hell, maybe this will even increase it because people really, really want to see Magi after seeing another pretty good series from the same creator. This one I'm pretty excited to watch myself. Life with an ordinary guy who reincarnated into a total fantasy knockout. Basically, you have a dull old man and his handsome best friend who are summoned to another world by a naked goddess. But because of the goddess mischief, has turned into Pyrrha's beautiful girl. And to get the bodies back, you have to go on to defeat the Demon King. If that premise doesn't sell you on funny and exciting, I don't know what will. These are the types of premise like with Cautious Hero that just sell me on what I want to do. Never know, maybe I will end up talking about this one over videos, but for sure I'm watching it because it looks like a damn fun time. Sabikui Bisco, or however the hell you say that. This one, if you watch the trailer, like the giant ass monsters that they fight, it mixes like what I would think is like medieval combat with like this supernatural combat. And it looks really fun. It just really screams almost gritty 80s kind of animation art design, but with that modern flair. And there's only one anime that's really given me that in recent memory, which would be Megalobox. And if you've seen my Megalobox videos, you know how much I love that show. And to me, I think this is going to be one of the underdogs, one of the hidden gems of the season that I don't think anyone should sleep on. You have Dolls Frontline or Girls Frontline. Now, at first I wasn't overly interested in this one, but then I was like, well, it kind of does look fun. And then I kept watching because they've had like 3 main PVs. The animation and stuff reminds you of like a Ufotable production with the art design and everything. The opening already been released is fantastic. And the idea of like these girl soldiers who are all named after different guns and things like that, it's just a recipe for emotional disaster but badass situations. And I think those are some of the most entertaining shows you can watch in a season, and I really think we're going to be covering this one weekly for sure. You have Requiem of a Rose King, which is actually based on a classic Shakespeare's tale, Richard III. And I mean, when you really start digging into this one and the idea it's going for, especially some of those genres that it's got going on, It's hard not to be impressed by this one, and I think is going to be something that, is probably going to have a very mixed reaction of people saying probably at times too slow, too boring, don't care about the drama. But I think for those history nuts and those drama nuts, I think this is the type of stuff, especially because you don't really get something that feels, when it's adapting Shakespeare or something reimagining of Shakespeare, you don't see it and say that actually feels proper with an anime twist. Usually you say that's just using the name for promotion, where with here, it's really making me say that's going to be special. Now, Tokyo 24th Ward, I'm actually excited about, but I'm worried about as well, because seems like to be one of the Cloverworks shows that's going to go off the rails. The director has been constantly tweeting about how it's not going well and how they're doing too many shows. And if you watch the preview, the first episode's supposed to be an hour, it looks to be really, really well polished. Unfortunately, it seems like that production is not going to hold past the first few episodes and quickly is going to go off the rails. So I'm going to watch it and I'm going to hope for the best, but I'm very worried as well. So if you're wondering why you're probably not going to see videos on it, I just don't have faith this production's going to remain smooth. And if it does somehow, maybe we'll get a video at the end. But I mean, this is definitely one that I recommend watching the preview for because it does look rather good. It's just worrisome about the production, especially with one of the main people behind it constantly talking shit about the schedule and everything like that. Now, Tribe 9 is actually from the same person who brought us Akudama Drive, but this time on a sports series. This one got brought to my attention, and I mean, immediately if you watch the preview, you're definitely going to get an Akudama Drive vibe in terms of the production and visual presentation. And I mean, even though this isn't something I talk about weekly, it's one of those shows that I'm willing to binge and kind of potentially get maybe a Haikyuu vibe saying like, okay, generally this isn't my genre, but it's hard not to like the characters and this unique sport and how they really go in with its presentation to sell you on something that might be boring at face value, but because of this medium really sells it as exciting. So I'm going to watch this one for sure. And I mean, there's some other shows that people have been talking about as well. There's that one show, she professed herself Pupil of the Wise Man. The main reason why I'm not really excited for that one is because the production does look rather bad. To me, it's like one of those, I think I'd probably enjoy reading it more than I would watching it, but you never know with shows like that. And there's always other shows that surprise us, but those are some of the ones I'm really excited about and seeing where they're going to go from here. But let me know what you're enjoying and kind of like what you're either reading that's coming out next season in terms of an anime adaptation, stuff you're just interested in. Let me know, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Since next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.